officially 10 o'clock. So I think we can get this show on the road. Thank you all for being here with us today. I'm Nancy DeVinny, Executive Director of the Texas Tropical Trail Region of 20 counties in South Texas. Today we're holding our 181st monthly partner event. We've been doing this since 2005, over 16 years we've been doing this. It's also our 10th virtual event. I want to welcome you all with us today. We have 41 people signed up today. Our next event is going to be held on Tuesday, July the 20th from 10 to 11 a.m. And we're still working on those programs, and we'll let you know as soon as we have something put together. Now I'm going to turn this over to Valerie for a minute. Valerie Bates, our board chair, has an important new announcement for you.
And I have 1 minute. Y'all heard that. I'm Valerie Bates. I'm the chair of the Texas Tropical Trail Board, and I reside, Nancy, in Port Isabel, where I'm the marketing director and a sort of site manager for the Lighthouse State Historic Site. Nancy shoehorned me in here because I wanted to share with you all that as of July 1st, Mike Carlisle will be our executive director. He and Nancy have been working together a lot over almost months now, lots of weeks, to make this transition as smooth as possible. Nancy will be with us throughout this transition, and she's assured us that she's not going to disappear off the face of the earth. So we're happy about that, but we're excited to bring Mike on board in this new role. Y'all have seen him as a staple here in our Zoom meetings, as he's mission control with running our virtual partner events. And so Mike, welcome. And we're looking forward to new ground we'll be able to cover and the direction that you're going to take us. Do you want to say a couple of things?
Yeah, I just, like she said, I don't have much time, but I just wanted to say that I really look forward to working with everyone. Like she said, we kind of want to make the transition as seamless as possible. I mean, but Nancy has huge shoes, so I'm doing, we're going to do our best. We want to just do whatever. Our goal is still going to be to help preserve the past and assist everyone in sharing their living history and local history, the largest to the smallest, the out of the way places. And we just, that's one of our biggest goals and still will be. And so I look forward to hearing from everyone. If you have some ideas or places you'd love to share, let me know, because one thing that we really wanted and we hope to be doing that soon, is getting back to in-person meetings where people can collaborate and talk and visit about their areas and what they want to do and how they've done it. And those kind of things are the things that I really miss, and I hope we get all back together to do that again.
And you all should know, thank you, Mike, that any communication with the Tropical Trail region, Mike and Nancy are sharing complete collaboration as we move into the future. And thanks, guys. Thank you, Mike. Nancy, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want you to know, my shoes aren't that big. I just wear a size 5.5. Mike's going to do a fine job. And I'm going to retire. I'm going to be around till August 31st, working with Mike. And I live on Lake Corpus Christi, and we have a big storm in Live Oak County. And we had a big storm last night. I lost my internet. So I'm at the Baptist Church in Orange Grove today, so I can be with you. Now we're moving ahead completely now. We're going to start our first program of the day, and I'm going to introduce Cliff Strain, who's changed his shirt and looks very professional now. And he is the director of the Port Aransas Museum, and he's going to take us on a little tour and tell us about the chapel on the dunes in Port Aransas. So take it away, Cliff.
Thank you. Well, the Chapel on the Dunes is getting a lot of attention here lately with a Texas Highway Magazine article in November and Texas Country Reporter last month. But it's always been kind of a hidden jewel in Port Aransas. It's tucked away in the heart of Old Town at the end of Avenue B on North 11th, which a lot of people don't know that section of north of where 11th Street is. And it was built by a woman that was just an incredible woman, Aline Carter, definitely a Renaissance woman of her time, the 7th Poet Laureate of Texas, first woman from San Antonio to get that honor, responsible for Texas Poetry Day, and just a highly educated, accomplished harpist and woman dedicated to spreading the gospel. And that's why she had the chapel built. So it was, and also, of course, in '76, John Cobb, did the fresco on the interior of the chapel. It took him about 2 years, and that really further increased interest in the chapel. Of course, we run tours pretty regularly. We do off-schedule tours. Otherwise, we do them on the first and third Saturdays of every month, starting at the museum, which is on the corner of Allister and Brundrett. And but we can do off-schedule tours, and it's pretty inspiring when you go in there to see all the biblical illustrations and learn about the history of Aline Carter and the chapel. It's also a subject of a lot of photographers. You can go up there anytime, but it is kept locked, so you have to get together with the museum, preferably with some advanced time on it, and we will take you up there on a tour. So every chapel tour always starts off with a visit to the Port Aransas Historical Museum, where we talk about the life of Aline Carter and all the wonderful contributions she made while she was here. Also, we listen to a short video that talks about a little bit of the history of the painting of the fresco in the chapel, and we get a few words from Aline Carter's last living son, Frank Carter. So let's step inside. While we're waiting for everyone to arrive, people have a chance to look at the many exhibits at the museum, or they can look through over 100 photos about the chapel and on the chapel, and also the pictures that are drawn in the chapel. So those are available in our archive, which we hold over 37,000 images of historic events, historic places, and like the chapel. And this is where we'll be sitting down to be looking at the short film. I think it's about less than 10 minutes about the chapel.
Part of this job was getting off the paint. And at that time, man, the only door that opened was this main door, and it was so dusty in here that you couldn't even see 2 feet. And I wore a respirator and stuff. We hammered and sanded and blasted the paint that was on here. And we got it down like I wanted it. And we put high glue on it. It's a natural animal high glue. And then we made quite a few batches of homemade gesso, which is whiting and marble dust and titanium white. You heat it. It was during the winter we started. It was Christmas time. And so I'd have to run down there and heat the pot, bring it back, heat the pot, bring it back. And finally, we got it all covered. The whole ceiling, I started in stars. I think there's a few stars left here. You see them? And the stars were the bands that I left after I introduced these panels. So I began to think the whole thing was stars. And then eventually, these sections were imposed upon the stars. And So the ceiling was one of the first things that I actually had to begin, because as stuff falls, it gets on the walls. So I began initially to do the ceiling, and as I say, it was just blue and white and kind of purple. You can see that band is left there. But it used to be stars everywhere. Because I had used this sculpture.
Well, most frequently question that I usually get is, when was the chapel built? It was built in the late 30s, about 38, 37, someplace along in there. And it was built by my mother, Aline Carter, who was a very religious and dedicated person. And one of the first things that she did when we bought the property was to put this little chapel up here, because there was no other church on the island at that time, and she built it for the children of Aransas. This was built by a woman by the name of Ethel Harris, who was the custodian of the San Antonio Missions. And she spent a lot of time in the hill country. All of these, we come down on weekends, and all of these flagstone steps in Floyd were got from the hill country. Our next step was to get the children of the island interested in the chapel, to entice the children to come to services. She started this ice cream and cake affair that got to be pretty funny as it went on. And we used to tell her that those kids don't care anything about their service, all they want is the ice cream and cake. Well, this went on until probably World War II.
So here we are at the corner of 11th and B. This is where you would park if you're visiting the chapel, not next to their rental unit here. And in the distance we see Frank Carter's old house that they're restoring to the way it was back in 1937. The path to the chapel is between these two rental cottages. And it gets a little steep. It's definitely not wheelchair accessible. There's the chapel up there. There are a couple of steep steps walking up to the chapel. About halfway, we've got a big step due to some washout from Hurricane Harvey that still needs to be repaired. And we're about to go inside. Door's already open. And you can see the inside of the chapel. We have the white marble altar that was designed by Aline Carter. Of course, Ethel Harris did the construction. Also, Ethel Harris did the production of the tiles that were designed by Ethel Harris. by Aline Carter. And the frescoes start off, you can see if I can zoom out here. In the Old Testament, got Adam and Eve here, tree of knowledge and tree of life. Also the formation of the earth below. Here we have Abraham about to sacrifice his son, We see an angel grabbing his arm and stopping him. Above, we have Daniel's dream about being in a lion's den. You can see the images, the lioness, her cubs, and male lions. Although some people think this is Elvis, it is definitely Daniel. We have a very large panel. To the right of that, we get into the New Testament of Mary, the Immaculate Conception. Below that, we have the Jewish temple. And we have one of John Cobb's concept pieces. This is Job distilling the Spirit of God. And all these radiant lines we see coming from the ceiling have to do with a sculpture that John had put in the beginning that was removed by the Carter family. Over here we have a very recognizable Pentecost. Below, we have Jesus telling the disciples where to throw the nets. You see that there is some blue shading underneath God, so that's that passage where he was walking on water. And we have another very recognizable piece. This is St. Peter when he fell asleep on the rooftop and was dreaming about eating unclean meat, as God was trying to push him towards including the Gentiles in Christianity. And you may have seen a picture of this earlier. This is City of God. And you see there's a wedding scene in here, and you're just going to have to come visit the chapel to hear the story on why that is, the inside has been painted something different. A very interesting story associated with that. And then on the back, we have a very chaotic and somewhat scary images of the apocalypse with Jesus in the second coming. In the center, a lot of symbolism, and of course the winged horsemen of the apocalypse flying about. Very interesting piece. The chapel has these pews that were added. We think sometime in the 90s. They're not the original seating. The original seating was just folding chairs. And also there are pieces, really beautiful stained glass pieces that have been removed as they're changing the windows out. We had some issues with some rotting in the framing, and they're being replaced with impact resistant glass. And once that installation is complete, there'll be a stained glass piece there, up at the top, also on this side, and above the altar. And again, you'll have to come back and see those because those are really beautiful pieces. To the right of the altar is a passage from the Bible, first from John, that became very near and dear to the heart of John Cobb as he painted the fresco. And that's about it. We're going to head out. On our way out, we'll notice that there's another really wonderful picture of Lane Carter on her wedding, and also the Carter Mansion, which is available to be visited as a museum in San Antonio. Another great picture of Lane Carter.
Thank you, Cliff. That was fantastic. Makes me want to run over there right now, and I'm sure other people feel the same way. Does anybody have any questions or any comments for Cliff? Cliff, you want to tell us one more time how people can get in touch, who they get in touch with to schedule a tour?
Well, they would get in touch with me through the museum. They can send an email, director@portaransasmuseum.org, or call the phone number 361-749-3800. And I also want to add that the Carters really have been just a tremendous family to work with, and they have their own website. We have a lot of additional information on the chapel on our website, which is portaransasmuseum.org, but there is a plethora of information and pictures and videos, even an illustrated guide of the pictures on the Carter's website, which is chapelonthedunes.org.
Thank you. And if there are no other questions, we're going to move on, and I encourage all of you to get in touch with Cliff and schedule your own tour of this hidden gem in Port Aransas on top of a sand dune. So thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to our second program, coming to us from Austin and the Texas Historical Commission. This program was suggested to us by our friend and the Texas Historical Commission Commissioner, Monica Burdett from Rockport. And this is a story about the highway signs you see on the roads of Texas, the historical markers. And Sarah McCleskey is with us from the Historical Commission. She's with the Historical Markers Program and the History Program Division. Sarah, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what we're going to see, please?
Yes, absolutely. First, thank y'all so much for inviting me here today. I really, really appreciate it. And just a little bit about my background. I'm born and raised in San Marcos. I'm actually coming to y'all today from Mountain City, where I live just south of Austin. I went to A&M University and got a history degree with a minor in English, and then started working at the THC in the Division of Architecture in 2005. I moved over to the History Programs Division a couple of years later and have been working in the marker program ever since. I went to St. Edward's University in Austin for my master's degree in history, and I've been in the role as a historian with the marker program since 2011. So I've been with the agency for almost 16 years now. And I just wanted to let everyone know here that if you ever have a question, even if it's not marker related, if it's just THC related, you can always contact me. I'd be happy to get you in touch with the right person, because sometimes it is difficult to figure out who you're supposed to talk to. And basically what you're going to see is just an overview of the marker program. I just wanted to give y'all some general information about what we do and a little bit of information about the different types of markers that are out there. That's one of the most common questions that we get. And then I picked just a few markers in the Tropical Trail region that I really enjoyed working on. It was difficult to narrow it down to just a few because there's so many in that region of Texas. So that's about it. Thank you so much for having me at your meeting and for the opportunity to present to you all about the official Texas Historical Marker Program. I only have 10 minutes, so this is an overview. If you're interested in more information, please contact me and I can point you to the materials and any training that we have available. So first, for those of you who aren't aware of the Texas Historical Commission, we are a state agency that focuses on historic preservation. Our agency's programs help Texans identify, evaluate, and protect valuable history. We're committed to providing local assistance and helping protect Texas's historic resources by increasing economic development. The THC is organized by division: archaeology, architecture, communications, community heritage development, Friends of the THC, historic sites, history programs, and staff services. Each one focuses on a different aspect of historic preservation or supports the agency. The Marker Program is within the History Programs Division, and it's one of the many programs that range and focus on historic designations or outreach with county historical commissions or youth outreach, museum services, and so on. Similar to most of the other programs within our division, the Marker Program is relatively small as far as staff size. We have 2.5 staff members. Bob Brinkman is the head of the program, myself, and Lynette Sin, half of the time, is our program specialist. The other time, she is the office manager for the History Programs Division. So we cover the entire state, all 254 counties. And our duties vary. We do a lot of different things in the Marker Program, from research and writing to surveys, refinishing markers, training and education. We process replacements, relocation requests. We work on intra-agency projects like the medallion and any travel guides that we have, and much, much more. So I wanted to first go over some basics. The main question that we get all the time is about the different types of markers and what is a marker. Is it a subject marker? Is it an RTHL? So I thought I would explain those to you. So the first type of marker are recorded Texas Historic Landmark markers, or RTHLs. These are for buildings and structures only that have architectural and historic significance. It is a legal designation. So that means that the designation carries a level of protection over the property. Property owners of an RTHL are required to notify the THC 60 days prior to any work done to the exterior of the building. Also, there are several advantages to having an RTHL. Property owners may qualify for economic incentives such as tax breaks or the federal or state tax credit program. Property owners also have access to free architectural technical assistance from THC architecture staff. RTHL markers may be identified by the tagline located on the bottom of the marker with its year of designation. The second type are Historic Texas Cemetery markers, or HTC markers. They have a different seal at the top of the marker made especially for designated historic Texas cemeteries. You can see the photo on the top and on the right. Cemeteries that have the Historic Texas Cemetery marker have gone through the designation process, which is a separate program through our cemetery program. The designation for a cemetery and the application process for a marker for a cemetery are two different processes with different requirements and deadlines, but the designation is a prerequisite for a marker. Similar to the RTHL markers, HTC markers also display a tagline at the bottom of the marker with the year of designation. The third type are subject markers, and RTHLs cover buildings and structures, HTCs cover cemeteries, and subject markers are for all other topics. That includes communities, events, individuals, institutions, sites, church congregations, and more. Subject markers differ from RTHLs and HTCs in that they aren't associated with any type of designation. They're placed for educational and tourism reasons. The fourth type that we monitor at the THC are 1936 Centennial Markers. Most of these are still around today, and there are over 1,000 granite and bronze markers that cover a variety of topics, including individuals, events, military sites, the creation of counties, and more. Some of these are now in disrepair, and so we've partnered with the Friends of the THC to raise money and hire a conservator to restore some of these markers. So there are two ways to apply for new markers. You can apply through the regular program or through the Undertold program. And you can see that they are very different. One is accepted, Undertolds are in the fall, regulars in the spring. The Undertold program doesn't require as much information up front at the application stage, and it also doesn't have to be sent by the County Historical Commission, but we do recommend that they are consulted on it because they will eventually. Also, you can see the difference in acceptance rate. The regular program, we usually get about 150 applications, and they have an 80 to 90% acceptance rate, versus the Undertold program, where we usually receive about 70 applications, and we take 10 to 15 to 20% acceptance rate. Also, I want to note that through these both programs, for new markers, we use those three main types, the RTHL, HTC, and subject markers. So those are the types of markers that we use for both programs. So there can be an RTHL that is Undertold. I'm going to skip through these two because I just explained that. Here are a few examples last few years. We have the Hidalgo Park Kiosko in Harris County, really interesting iron frame covered with textured concrete to make it look like a tree. Jasper Steers Baseball, semi-professional African-American baseball team, played for the American Negro Baseball League. St. Paul United Methodist Church is an RTHL in Dallas. It's designed by noted African-American architect William Sidney Pittman. And then Olga Samaroff, who was the first American and first female teacher at Juilliard School in New York. She was a famous pianist and teacher. She wrote a lot of piano textbooks. And here's where you can go for resources about the Undertold program, including a really cool Google map. We also have other tools on our website for research guides that we have for a variety of topics. They have examples in here of how to write the narrative history, formatting, checklists, suggested sources, etc. We also have resources for documentation that you can use that have a bunch of really cool digital resources. And then I also want to point you to the Historic Sites Atlas, where you can search by a variety of different ways: keyword, county, city, address, by designation, and get some information on not just markers, but National Register properties, cemeteries, museums, courthouses, etc. So I wanted to highlight a few historical markers from the Tropical Trail region. These are ones that I chose because they have a special meaning to me, or I just found them incredibly interesting. So if I had more time, I could definitely highlight more. It was hard narrowing it down to these. So first, I have to start with Rockport and Aransas County. Both my parents are from Rockport, so I spent a lot of time there whenever I was younger. I loved all the birding trails, and so the Connie Hagar marker is really close to my heart. But also the Rockport City Cemetery is. I used to ride my bike around there all the time with my cousins, so that's also of special interest. But I love the way that Rockport, especially in Aransas County, is incorporating a lot of history into their travel guides, their walking trails, and things like that. It's really, really amazing. Another one I wanted to highlight was the Robstown Labor Camp. This is in Nueces County. It's a 2013 Undertold marker, and really interesting story. What was so fascinating about it is all the photographs that are available through the Library of Congress, and really seeing the community in action and all the buildings that were there, and the children and the people and the families interacting. Really, really cool story. So check that out. And then lastly, the First Mexican Congress and the Jovita Idar marker in Laredo. I chose this one because it was just kind of different in how, really interesting, but also very different in how it came to be. We originally received an Undertold application for in Edwards County that detailed the lynching of Antonio Rodriguez in Rock Springs. That didn't end up getting selected, but we noticed that a lot of the narrative was about this first meeting of the First Mexican Congress and involving Jovita Idar. And anyway, it was very interesting. We ended up working with the sponsor and the Webb County Historical Commission to work on both of these markers. And it was really fascinating learning about these individuals and groups that came together, and the education and activism, and all about her newspaper, and really, really interesting. So lastly, I just wanted to point y'all back to the online Historic Sites Atlas. If you want to look up any more markers that are in your area or throughout the state, or you're doing research on a particular topic, this is a really great place to start your research and to see if there's anything out there that we can provide you. That way you don't have to go searching for it. So check out this online tool, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I would be happy to answer them. You can always email me or send an email to our markers@thc.texas.gov. That goes to all three of the marker staff, and we would be happy to talk to you. Thank you so much.
That was very informative. Are there any questions or comments for Sarah? Monica, we thank you for suggesting this. It's something that every county and all 254 counties in Texas have historical markers. We should all be aware of them. And there used to be a great book you could purchase called Why Stop. I think there's two editions of it. And if you purchase this book, or maybe it's online nowadays, you don't even have to stop on a busy highway, or if you can't get to the site, it tells you what it is. And I know I have both print versions of that book. So if there are
Nancy,
yes.
Sorry, I have a question. The woman that Sarah was talking about at the end, Jovita, and how do you spell her last name?
It's Idar, Jovita Idar.
Okay, thank you.
I know it was a lot of information. Normally my marker talks are about an hour. So 10 minutes was really hard to fit all of that in. So I realized it was a lot, but I appreciate y'all's time.
Well, perhaps some programs would be interested in having you come to speak to them, and they'll get to enjoy your entire 1 hour program. So we thank you very much. And if there are no other questions, we're going to move on.
Nancy?
Yes,
Nancy?
ma'am.
Yes, it's Monica. I just wanted to add something. Thank you, Sarah. That was a wonderful presentation. Even though it was shortened, but it told, all the basics. I did want to add that myself and 3 other commissioners for about a year now have been working on development. We're not developing it, but we're trying to get the funding and, the outline of what we want. But we're working on a travel app that will include all of the markers, all of the state historic sites, all of the historic cemeteries. It will include information on the Main Street Cities program, that the Main Street Cities, that is a program also looked over by the Texas Historical Commission. So all of the Texas Historical Commission assets will actually be in this app, and it'll be a true app on your phone. So you're cruising down the highway at 75 miles an hour and you see the sign, historical marker in 1 mile. And so you don't have time to stop, but you still want to know what happened right there. You'll have an interactive map and you can click on that marker and it will show you exactly what's the verbiage is on that marker. And for another phase of I don't know if we're going to have it in the first phase, but for a second phase of the app, we're going to actually have it read to you what's on the app. What's on the marker. So then a third version is going to actually have Spanish translation. We have big plans for this program, for this app. But anyway, it's still in the working stage. We're trying to procure the money to be able to produce this. And I think we have a real good shot at it with one of the foundations. And so be looking for that in about a year. We'll be making big announcements about it because it's going to change everything about THC, because it's going to be much more user-friendly. That's what we use nowadays, is our phone for pretty much everything. So now you'll be able to see the historical markers as well as the state historic sites, everything.
Thank you for that
Monica.
information. We appreciate it. And if there are no other remarks or questions, comments regarding the historical marker program, we're going to move on to our next program, which involves another historical commission site. And it's the Fulton Mansion State Historic Site in Rockport. And I'd like to introduce Alan Lee first, who is the site manager of Fulton Mansion State Historic Site. And then following him, we'll have a little brief moment to meet live DJ Chilcoat, who DJ is a docent and a member of the Friends of the Fulton Mansion, and she's going to lead the virtual tour of the Fulton Mansion for us. But first, let's let Alan say a few words, and then followed by DJ, please.
Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful day here in Rockport. I think if we all pray hard enough, that storm that's out there will dissipate and go away, so we don't have to worry about that. It's my pleasure to introduce DJ Chilcoat. She is a volunteer extraordinaire, and I think she's been with the mansion for at least 12 years. So she has been with the mansion through multiple restorations, closings, openings, hurricanes, the pandemic, and now opening again. So now we are now open 6 days a week, which is good. We have about 2,000 people a month coming through. I haven't seen the video yet, so I'm just excited as you are to see it. And I will let DJ talk more about her involvement and love of the mansion, and then we can watch the video together.
First of all, I just want to welcome you to the Fulton Mansion. Oakhurst was what the Fultons actually called their home. This was their retirement home. This was their dream home. And everything in this home is put here to impress you. So let's take a look at some of the items that are here. It took 3 years to build the home, and the flooring that we're standing on today is from England, and it's absolutely gorgeous. This is the original flooring, and we're extremely proud of this. Now, as you look around the ceiling, you see that there is a beautiful medallion over the light. That medallion is made of plaster. It looks like it's a solid piece, but it's actually 32 individual pieces. Everything in this house that's white is plaster, and that includes all of the what appears to be woodwork. So the archway that you see is plaster. What they did to make everything is that they had what they called a mule. This is a piece of wood that has a piece of metal on it, and we have one upstairs that we'll show to you. And then the plaster was put up. It was dried, allowed to dry to just the right consistency, and then they would drag from this vestibule. You can look into George's office. You see the beautiful staircase, and you can also look right over here into the parlor. Now there's one room that's kind of special on this side, the conservatory. Let me tell you about this conservatory. They were halfway through building the house, so they were 1.5 years into it. And they made a trip, probably to New York City. Anyway, Harriet found a new room that she just had to have. It was a garden room in a house. Now that was not in the plans anywhere. So George, when they came back, was certainly dismayed and didn't know what he was going to do to satisfy Harriet. This was, after all, her dream house. So what they did is to take the porch, which was supposed to be a wraparound, and they walled in 3 sides. So you can see right here that she had a perfectly lovely place to come and enjoy her plants. This is, by the way, the original mansion, the original fountain from the Fulton mansion. The Fultons were ahead of their time in many ways as a family room. So right over here, next to one of the bay windows, you might have George Fulton sitting right there in a chair with all 16 of his grandchildren sitting around him. Now in this room is a beautiful fireplace. This fireplace is original to the house. There are 9 fireplaces in this home. The interesting thing about them is that not a single one of them has ever seen a fire. They had central heat. There is a furnace in the basement, and that provides the heat. So this is the heat register right here. All of the fireplaces are made of slate, but they are faux painted, you'll see as we go through the room, to be a decorative rock of some kind. So some look like marble, that sort of thing. Now I'd like to point the mirror out to you. This mirror, and also the one in the study, are original to the home. They have never been removed from the mansion, and they have never been resilvered. The wood around the mirror has been redone, but the mirror itself is original to the mansion. The mansion was started in 1874 and was finished up in 1877. So when you think about that time period, having central heat was pretty far ahead of your time. You'll also note that there's a carpet in here. All of the rooms are carpeted. The reason they did, remember I told you that they put everything in here to impress you. And a covered floor at that time was very, very, very much a status symbol. So that's the reason the carpets are all here. George took care of business in this room. He ate in here, he snacked, he tippled a little bit, he enjoyed a cigar, maybe a game, and then he took care of business. He was a very, very successful businessman. George's visitors, his business visitors, could just come in the back door and not disturb the ladies in the parlor, so it was very, very convenient. look at the floor. These tiles are all original to the home, every one of them. The table is set today for a family meal. Excuse me, they're having company today. You know how I can tell? There aren't any napkin rings. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, let me tell you what it has to do. Everybody in the Fulton family had their own napkin ring. And after a meal was over, they put that napkin ring on their napkin and they used that same napkin again later. So you used a napkin from wash day to wash day, but you would never want your guest to use a used napkin. So there are never, ever napkin rings on the table if in fact you're going to have guests. They are absolutely beautiful. You can kind of see, okay, red cypress is what we're talking about, and black walnut. So you can see the definition of the wood right there, and the beautiful hardware on this door. But this is original to the home, and it still works, so it's pretty magnificent. The wood all came from Louisiana. And even the baseboards are of that beautiful cypress. I do want to point out the beautiful staircase. It's original to the home, and these stairs are original to the home, and you'll not find a lot of creaking here. They're enormously sturdy. Now the carpet on the stairs is of better quality than the carpet in the living room. And the reason for that, remember, we're trying to impress. And there's nothing else to look at as you're going upstairs except the carpet. So of course it has to be top quality, and it was. George climbed these stairs every day until he was 83 years old. I'll tell you something about this particular chair. This chair is made of horsehair, and it's never been recovered. So if you look at it closely, you'll see that it's somewhat tattered. Now, for goodness sake, we've got a home where people are trying to impress, and we put a tattered chair in the room. Now, why is that? Let's think about it. Let's look in the ceiling. There's no medallion in the ceiling. Family. Only family comes up here. Everything is carpeted. And again, all of the hardware is, let me back up on that hardware. George's brother owned a hardware store in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, I guess. Anyway, he had that store, so I'm sure he gave George a good deal, on that sort of. This floor is again shellcrete, that same concrete sort of thing. This is the flushing toilet. It's not a real pretty item to have in the house. So for that reason, it's made in an unusual way. So if this comes down, it actually appears to simply be a bed. This room, which was probably a bedroom, is the room that they left. This room was in the best condition of any room in the house at the time. And you can see what a mess it was. But I'm really happy that it was left like this because you can see the construction of the mansion. If you look at this diagram, you'll see that the mansion's walls are made of pine boards like that. So it's a solid wood wall. And you can see the wood right here stacked. And then over that you see the lath. And then you have the cement in between. So this mansion is extremely sturdy because the floors are made that way, the ceilings, and you can see those are made exactly the same way. It's said that the mansion has enough wood to build a small subdivision today. The state purchased the mansion for $150,000, but it cost $1.6 million to restore it, and it took 7 years. So it wasn't until 1983 that the mansion opened as a museum. Now there was a trailer park, you might want to take a look at that. There was a trailer park out in front of the mansion, and I was lucky enough to talk to the great-granddaughter of the trailer park owners, who also owned this house. And we have had guests who come in who look for their name on the wall. This is a mule right here. There it is. And this tells you where they were going to use this one. And you see this makes the pattern. It's using one of those of the crown molding right there. And be sure to take a look at the view. Absolutely incredible. The Fultons had a pier, and they also had a bathhouse. You know, it wasn't fashionable to wear a bathing suit around anybody. It could only be used at the beach. So what the ladies would do is wear their outfits, whatever they have on their dresses, out to the little bathhouse, and they would change into their bathing suit in the bathhouse. And then the reverse would happen when they left. I love this basement. And we used to not let anybody down here, and then it finally was, we put some things in it to see, and it's just fantastic. So obviously this is where they did all their washing and hanging the clothes to dry. This is where the cisterns were, right in here. There were two of them, where the water from outside was filtered, came in here, and it was filtered through charcoal in here. And then it was pumped from here upstairs. Now this is kind of delightful. You can go on in there if you'd like to and see what they might have had in their pantry. This is why George wasn't worried about fire. See, this is solid as a rock. The coal room, fuel storage. Here is the furnace right here. That was falling apart, and it went to A&M, and a bunch of Aggies put it together, and we have it back now. This is what it looked like. Those are original pieces that have been put out. Made the area around the side, and that would be filled with ice or cold water. So this is like the refrigerator, the larder. To visit, and they had a trunk. When they got ready to leave, it was brought down to the basement so that it could be taken through this door to the carriage. You wouldn't bring something like this down the front steps. Doesn't look right. You see, that would be impolite. So what you would do is the servants would take this around. There is a third floor. It's laid out exactly like the second floor. So that's why we don't take you up there. You'd just be looking at much of the same thing. Bedrooms, you know. There are 6 bedrooms in the house, 1.5 baths, the basement, central heating, gas lighting, flushing toilets, running water. And that's why the state of Texas, well, and the architecture of the house too is very, very unusual. And that's why the state of Texas chose this house to be one of its historic homes.
Welcome to the Fulton Mansion. This app is your personal tour guide through the house. You can go at your pace in any order you choose. Just remember, everything works by touching the screen. To scroll up or down, swipe the screen with your finger. To select an option, just tap it. When you're on a room page, you can swipe through the photos up top. Press play to hear audio. If you want to see other Texas tours, go to the tour homepage and explore other exciting mobile tour guides. Now you're ready for your tour.
Concludes the tour. Is DJ back with us? I think she's disappeared. Alan, do you have things you want to say? Any questions, any conclusions?
I don't see her on here, but I love that she said about the furnace that a bunch of Aggies put it together.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Alan?
I just took a tour with some of our lighthouse staff a couple of weeks ago, and this brought back a lot of memories. She did such a great job in really making this structure come to life in a way a little bit different than I'd heard before. It is so worth the effort, if you will, to get to Rockport and take this in. It's such an important structure in the coastal bend region, and a reflection of a real true Texan spirit to put a structure like this right across from the water, as though it were daring nature, but here it still stands in all its glory. So well done, Alan and staff.
If there are no other questions or comments, we're going to move on to our final program of the day. And thanks again to Alan. And Alan, please express our appreciation to DJ. And we're going to take a virtual visit of the City of Alamo Museum. Now, don't be confused. We're not in San Antonio at the Shrine of Texas Liberty. We're down in the Rio Grande Valley between, I believe, McAllen and Wesley Co. in Hidalgo County. And I'd like to introduce the curator of the City of Alamo Museum. His name is Alejandro Alex Oyoque. And Alex, if I've mispronounced your name, please say it again for us. Thank you for being with us. And I'm going to turn the program over to you, Alex.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And after the last presenters, now I feel like the little engine that could. So much history, so well presented. It was truly amazing. The presentations were formidable, and I really, really enjoyed them. We are still in our infancy. Our museum it hasn't been here long, but we started with it was 5 of us who started the startup committee, and our task was to form a museum from the ground up. And I see that this is not an opportunity given to everyone, immediately, but we took the task, and I think we've come a long way.
Well, everyone has to start somewhere, and I've seen the video. I know that you have done a wonderful job, and I think everyone is going to be impressed with what you have in the City of Alamo.
Welcome to the City of Alamo Museum. The museum was established in 2015, but it actually didn't open its doors until 2017. The reason was that we have received so many donations, and we received so many items that we needed to preserve them. We needed to check the condition, and also we needed to safeguard them. In 2015, the City of Alamo received a donation of 2,500 angels. These were donated by Cheryl Pfeiffer, a local resident, who had been collecting angels for quite some time. So we have 2,500 angels. On display, I think we have counted 1,800. And they all are permanently displayed in this part of the museum, which we like to call the Angel Gallery. We have anyway from fountains, tree tops, Christmas tree ornaments, and music boxes, and everything you can think of when you think about angels. And we have them the way we still preserve them the way we receive them, meaning that they haven't suffered any damage, they haven't been modified or anything. They had just been cleaned, and we try to display them. So this area, all this right here, is just the angels. We still have some more angels in collections. We have a small room for collections, and we still have some in there, but we are waiting on once we need to put some to rest, then we need to bring another ones out and so forth, and so on. And next we're gonna go and I'm gonna introduce you to the fire department area. This is this whole wall is is dedicated to the fire department, the Alamo, or the City of Alamo Fire Department. The volunteer fire department was established in 1926, and this was to the insistence and the suggestion of Carl B. Schumacher, who was back then he was city secretary, and he was also he went to become treasurer and also tax collector, and he stayed with the fire department for 50 years. 50 years. Of those 50 years, he was fire chief. He was a tanker truck driver, and then he ended up being a fire marshal. And another thing was that he was a chronicler and a historian. So he kept really good notes on the history of the city of Alamo since 1926. And we have a small miniature fire truck that was used mainly in parades. Was used mainly in parades in FAR, and I hear that they also use it in several other cities, but it was decommissioned. This was built between 1946 and 1953 by Frank Ross, who was fire chief at FAR Fire Department. And then let me show you another part of our collection. This is the Alamo News. The Alamo News was a bi-weekly publication that was published here in Alamo from 1918 to 1982. Now the yearbooks prior to 1928, they got burned or they disappeared. Some issues were found, and now the university, UTRGV, in their archives, they have some copies, or they have some microfilm of these newspaper editions. But luckily, we were able to keep, and the fire department was able to rescue the remaining of the issues of the Alamo News. So we have the collection all the way from 1928 to 1982. Every binder that you see is a year's worth of newspapers. So this is our treasure. This is what we are writing grants for. We want to get a book scanner, so we want to be able to make this available to the public. So this area is all dedicated to the Alamo News. And if I may, let me show you this picture right here. This is one of our citizens. His name was Aurelio Barrera. There's it's a really good story about Aurelio Barrera. Turns out that he was not only the local TV repairman, and he was a photographer, and then he was also the only cab service in the city. So back then, in 1961, there was only one cab here in Alamo. So turns out that the bank was robbed, or there was a robbery in the bank, and the bank robber had climbed through the ceiling and took off with $35,000, and he mugged everybody. And then when they opened the doors in the morning, he left everybody tied down. So we're not sure if he had a getaway car or not, but he called a cab, and there's only one cab in Alamo. So Mr. Aurelio Barrera picked him up and took him over and drove him over to Donna or West Laco. So anyway, when he came, he noticed as he was driving that the passenger was opening up a bag and had a lot of money, and he thought it was a little bit suspicious, but he hadn't heard about the bank robbery. So he left him. When he came back, there was a big commotion in the city that the bank was had been robbed, and that the thief had gotten away. And so he walks over to the sheriff and says, I just took a fare up to West Laco. The guy had these big wads of money, and so he wasn't from here. And then he says, well, where do you live him? So he took him over to West Laco. They went to the motel where he dropped them off. And sure enough, they opened the doors, and the money was all in the bed, and the guy was coming out of the shower with his he was still holding his towel with all the money there. So he got arrested. So I don't know. I'm sure that if we had that program back then about the America's Dumbest Criminals, he'll probably be one of the main stories. So that's just a funny tale from Alamo. And let's continue. This is this area. This is the pioneers. The pioneers, the people that came in to purchase land. Okay, now we have a local businessman who his name is Bob Huck. What he did, he's a car collector, and he purchased a truck that was to be part of his collection, and the truck came with a trunk full of clothes, and the clothes were this right here. These are clothes from the 1900s, 1910s, and 1920s. This part of the museum, we call it the Left Behind. There was a business here. In fact, that was the business from Mr. Aurelio Barrera. He was a radio repairman, so he passed away like in 1976. His shop was closed by his family, and it wasn't open again. So, not all of them, but most of these items were taken from that place. And now the reason we have them here because they all have a story to tell. And this, to me, this is like a bridge between generations. I've seen grandfathers and parents and kids coming over, and they're not on their phone. They're talking. They're saying, "Oh, what about this piece? Look, do you used to use this? Oh, how do you use this? Oh, look at that camera. Now it fits in your cell phone." So all of these pieces have a story to tell. The most interesting story to me, and I can't get over it, is this right here. This is a gasoline iron. So every time everybody sees it, or somebody sees it, they begin, to tell their stories. And I've heard stories of people who have used them. I've heard stories of people who said, "How can they?" I wouldn't even, in my wildest dream, dream about somebody making an iron, a gasoline iron. So this is just a way of making or creating conversations. Because conversations to me is an art form in a state of extinction. So whenever they put their phones away and they begin a conversation and they're talking, I feel like we accomplished something. So this is it. This is what we have at the International Museum. And before you go, we have also a space for traveling exhibits. We're now showing the Fort Brown, the first military border post in Texas. This originated at UTRGV and also CHAPS, and it's been traveling, and we'll have it here until August. So stop by the museum and come and pay us a visit. Thank you very much.
Era, very famous and memorable. I'm sure we'll all remember that story. So are there any questions or comments for Mr. Alex regarding his wonderful museum? We thank you all for being with us. We thank all of you program presenters and the rest of you. We look forward to seeing you next month on July 20th. And I'm going to turn it over to Valerie to let her say a final few words.
We thank everybody for participating. I love how we end up inspiring each other to be better, to do better. Market research, as they used to call it, or maybe still do, where we steal ideas from everybody. So appreciate you all being part of that for us today. We love having the stories to tell. We wouldn't have anything to talk about if it wasn't for your participation. The visit to the chapel, virtual though it was, brought back memories of a visit there where we all loaded onto a school bus and climbed that hill and got to see that in person. And we're looking forward to that, as Mike mentioned. Mike, before we close it out, you have a couple last words to say, no pressure.
Let me unmute myself. There you go. Oh, I just said, like I said before, I think I love the way Alex put it at the end. If we can work together and share our living history and the people, places, and things that we have to share in our little out of the way places, if we create conversations, like he says, that are dying, and we get people talking to one another and really looking at one another, that's what we want to do across Texas.
We have a lot to look forward to. This has been a great meeting. My favorite quote of the day is Cliff saying that he needed to go put on a better shirt. TMI, but we're all family here. Thanks everybody for participating.
Wait, Valerie, you might want to tell them about the special incentive to fill out our survey.
Oh yes, of course, because it's written right here. Thanks to the Fulton Mansion, they're going to offer up the incentive for this month's participation in our survey. We appreciate your comments. If you don't leave them in the chat and you just keep them to yourself, we won't know how to get better. So we really value your opinions. And as a reward for that, we'll enter you in a drawing for the Fulton Mansion State Historic Site for complimentary admission tickets. And so we ask that you take advantage of that. And we look forward to July 20th when we'll all get together again. And like Mike mentioned, we are already making plans for our first in-person event. Sorry, there's my phone. And we'll see. It'll be a new adventure for all of us. But thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate your support.
Thank you, Valerie. And we are going to move into our monthly board meeting for the Texas Tropical Trail Board of Directors in a couple of minutes. And so the rest of you, we say thank you for being with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Bye-bye, Alex.